What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Yesterday, a single message seemed to set the internet off around Switch 2 hype, and I had to go back and double check to make sure it was right, but yes, it goes back to this one tweet that also seemed to give us a bit more confidence in a certain feature being ready for Nintendo's next system. We'll go over all of that, though, here today. Also, we are going to be talking about a brand new handheld that has now been announced, continue to add onto the roster of PC handhelds. And then we also have Sony, who's explaining that they don't have enough intellectual properties to choose from, at least original ones, despite there being apparently a whole wealth of titles that have been left in the past. So if you guys enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps that a ton. And if new here to the Small Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you'd like to learn more about that, click the join button down below this video. And we're gonna start today with Space Marine 2, which I believe is actually out today, although I've seen like releases for September 9th and stuff, but they also put out a release guide showing that it was available today. And in fact, reviews did go live yesterday, which we can see over on Metacritic, currently sitting at an 83. Now, this is on 42 critic reviews, and as I was going through this, I noticed something. One, many of the reviewers, the majority of the ones, seem very happy with the campaign. They said it was very exciting, exhilarating, and it was just a good time all the way through, and it didn't feel like it overstayed its welcome. But then they also touched on the fact that there are other game modes with multiplayer in mind outside of the campaign. For example, of course, PvP, and then also PvE. And it does seem to harken back to what I've been mentioning quite a bit, the old days of a game comes out, it's not dubbed a live service, but it has multiplayer modes, it has single player stuff. It feels like a complete game, but one that you can just play like indefinitely going forward if you would like and you're enjoying it with friends. So I'm going to check this one out when I have a chance. And I think I'm mostly going to be playing it here and there with multiplayer because while the first Space Marine game I remember seeing and checking out on the 360, I didn't get like super into it, but I have been seeing gameplay of this leading up to release, and it kind of just looks like a Gears of War style game, and that could be a lot of fun, so sure. I'll give it a try, probably some of the PvP stuff when I get a chance. Also, next month, we do have Silent Hill 2 releasing from Bloober Team, and what started out as a lot of skepticism around it, I think people are starting to come around to what Bloober Team is putting forward here, especially after the recent previews. But then I see stuff like this, where this was put out over on Twitter X from their official account saying, looking for the most immersive way to play Silent Hill 2, you'll have an option to turn off all UI elements. So as you can see here, they don't have anything around the screen. You have your character there in the middle, and they've also created a 90s filter with grain effect, color correction, and screen adjustments to complete the old school experience. You might be wondering, how do you play without UI? Well, they say player guidance will naturally be directed by the game's visuals, sound effects, and James' behavior. He will glance towards important spots and have different animations and facial expressions during wounded states. That actually sounds incredibly interesting. That is a mode I would like to try out. I mean, obviously we're very used to having like the HUD and UI for information, clearly, but if you could legitimately play this game without any of that, that could be one of the most immersive horror games out there, psychological horror, whatever. Yes, I think I'm going to be giving that one a shot when it comes out with the UI completely off very, very quickly as I start my playthrough for it. So really fun stuff there. And again, Bloober Team seems to be turning the public opinion around on them as they lead to launch. Here's hoping the game comes out, it scores really well, and people can be excited about Bloober Team showing up in the credits. Oh, and we did have our first look at the Minecraft movie. There was a trailer that was released. We have some screenshots here of it because, well, WB, and yeah, it hasn't gone over the best online. In fact, right now, it's like 200 some odd thousand dislikes, just over 300,000 likes. And, well, it's not what I was expecting necessarily. I mean, you have like the world of Minecraft here that they're trying to make it look close to the game. It's not quite all the way there. They used to have real people walking into it. So Jack Black is Steve, and it seems like he's just really just Steve is playing Jack Black. So I'm not really sure what to make of this thing. I'm not a big Minecraft person, so it's not really targeted towards me anyway. So if you're a really big Minecraft fan, let me know what you thought of that trailer down below in the comments. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with the Switch 2 craze that really kicked up yesterday. And I had to go around looking like, what happened here? Because the Switch 2 was trending, which it tends to do that when there's some sort of report that gets put out there. And while we had a very mild statement, we'll say, that got out there, again, adding some more confidence to a highly requested feature for this new system, it actually came from this tweet here. This is from Christopher Dring, who, okay, so Christopher Dring has put information out there in the past ahead of GamesIndustry.biz. Typically when they hear things that say, I don't know, Gamescom, he tends to put stuff out there alongside of other outlets, but he said, with industry whispers around something Switch 2 related happening this month, I thought I'd remind everyone of the official list of the greatest game consoles of all time, Nintendo Switch, and then just everything else. Okay, so it obviously likes the Switch, right, based on the list he has there, but this quickly garnered over 200,000 views and a lot of quote tweets as people were taking this as, oh, Switch 2 happening this month. And the way he kind of worded it here, it does sound like, okay, I was just at a big trade show and people are talking about this, something Switch 2 related happening this month. Could also be, hey, I was looking online and people seem to be talking about a potential for something happening this month since, well, we had that weird, like, double feature direct in August, maybe to make room here. So here's my favorite list of game consoles, and the Switch is number one. It could have honestly been just that, like, that's it. But of course, the internet did pick it up and discussed it, ran with it, and even had some interesting information come out, like from David Gibson here. Says, no one seems to have noticed the Nintendo assembler Hoseiden is spending 2 billion yen on production equipment and 1 billion yen on automation in fiscal year 3/25 for its major customer in amusement, that's Nintendo. I still expect September news and March 2025 release for next device. Now, the chart that he shares here does show an obvious jump in just spend, but a lot of it seems to be around, they say, a new Vietnam factory, which you would then also need, obviously, production equipment to go with it, automation as well. So that all kind of checks out there as to why that bar would be so much higher. And look, if they are putting together this new Vietnam factory, it would probably be for after the next system is out to make sure they can continue to meet demand, because, well, we all expect Nintendo's next system to do well based on what we've seen here. But we can see this over on Reddit as a lot of this information was starting to be shared. For some reason, Nate is over here. Nate the Hate 2 says it has backwards compatibility support. Okay, so yeah, this led to a lot of outlets reporting on this specifically. There's one comment that Nate put on Reddit, and even someone back and updated a backwards compatibility our ongoing article just around more and more corroboration for this feature. I will say this, Nate seems very confident that there is going to be backwards compatibility. I do believe myself that it will have backwards compatibility, although I do wonder mostly about patches of some kind. For example, Breath of the Wild, as we heard, that was showcased. Could that have something attached to it that would actually cost you money to get those features? Kind of like how Sony did a $10 upgrade path for certain PlayStation 4 games that went up to PlayStation 5. I think that's still possible, but I also believe that the company or developer or publisher would also have to actually go out and make the effort to do that, whereas otherwise, the game would just function normally, maybe in a Switch mode on the Switch 2, kind of like what we see with the PS5 and the PS4. And you know what? At this point, I am hoping that the new system gets shown as soon as possible. And yes, sure, in September, why not? The fact that Christopher Dring could have made a tweet that's mostly based around reading stuff on Twitter or on a forum somewhere and is like, oh yeah, I'll make this funny tweet. And that's what kicked a lot of this off. We are sort of at that point where people are just hungry to finally see this system, because it does feel like we are that close to it actually being revealed. So here's hoping the very odd, noticeably odd event from Nintendo with that dual feature does signal that they are making room for it to be shown in September, because I don't think they're going to meet their fiscal year goal of 13.5 million Switch systems. I believe it is actually falling off a bit faster than even Nintendo is expecting based on some of the sales reports and estimates that have been coming out. So at this point, there's not going to be a major holiday to necessarily save, especially if, say, it is backwards compatible, as we believe. Well, then you're still going to sell software, because all they're going to be doing, customers, is just upgrading their hardware. They'll still buy Zelda, they'll still buy Mario and Luigi and so on. So at this point, Nintendo, yeah, it's finally time to show this thing, because it doesn't take much to get people to talk about it at this point. Next up, let's talk about a new handheld for the PC market, which we have many of these handhelds now, and that's not even counting a lot of the things that we see for the emulation handheld scene, which I feel like there's a new one every week just about being announced that I see online. It's constant. But of course, a lot of these companies do want to at least take a shot at what is still, I think, a very young market with the PC gaming handheld. Just try to establish a foothold in the industry, and now it appears that Acer is taking a shot at it. I mean, we have over on their website where they go over many of the features, and we have the spec list here. Now, this is for their Acer Nitro Blaze 7. Now, many of these handhelds have gone with the Z1 Extreme. In this case, though, Acer appears to be going with the Ryzen 7 8840HS. Still 8 cores, 16 threads, up to 5.1 gigahertz max boost, but it will employ AMD Ryzen AI that supports up to 39 or up to total 39 AI tops. So that is an interesting wrinkle to keep in mind, as we do see many processors now starting to push towards having additional hardware, for example, in feature sets to accommodate AI being more and more integrated. And we have seen that used for things like actually really good upscaling techniques. So something to keep in mind there with this one, to see if maybe a chipset like this would be the better option versus Z1 Extreme, at least to have them both in these handheld formats and be able to be benchmarked together. We also have the 7-inch Full HD 1920 by 1080 IPS display, 144 hertz, and apparently The Verge was able to get this information from Acer that it is a native landscape screen, which would fit in much better, obviously, with a handheld, since, well, you're mostly just always going to use it landscape. 16 gigabytes of LPDDR5X at 7500. That is slightly faster than what we've seen in some of the older handhelds, so there should be a nice little speed boost there in some of the games when it comes to like frame rate, anything that's really pulling from memory quite a bit. Then we have up to 2 terabytes M.2 NVMe drive. The battery is at just over 50 watt hours. It also has Wi-Fi 6E and Bluetooth 5.3. We're still waiting for availability timing as well as price point. Here's hoping with price point they can at least be somewhat competitive with the market, because we have had some wild swings, which really places things like the Steam Deck still sort of in the best bang for your buck territory, especially if you maybe get an older Steam Deck that isn't necessarily the OLED model. You can find those things, I mean, like really cheap at this point. But I guess technically, the more companies that attempt to enter the space, the more competition, and also the more reason you'll see AMD and who knows, maybe even NVIDIA and kind of see Intel start to build more and more chips to accommodate them. And that kind of competition can hopefully get us to, I mean, what we would, I assume, look for with that solid 1080, 60 FPS performance across the board, even for some of the bigger games with reasonable battery life. We're still working our way there, but the fact that so many companies seem at least interested in attempting it means that there is money to be made there for these different chip manufacturers. But for now, we'll wait to see what Acer has in terms of pricing and when they can get it out the door. Next up, let's talk about Sony and apparently their lack of intellectual properties. At least that's according to Hiroki Totoki, as there was an entire interview with the Financial Times, and they had actually quite a bit of a write-up here with analysts even weighing in, but we'll go over some of the key points and quotes. Let's take a look. Again, this over on Financial Times. They start off saying in an interview with the Financial Times, chief executive Kenichiro Yoshida said Sony needed to shift its focus from distribution to the creation of intellectual property to cement a corporate transformation from a consumer electronics brand into a global entertainment company. Chief Financial Officer Hiroki Totoki says whether it's for games, films, or anime, we don't have that much IP that we fostered from the beginning. We're lacking the early phase of IP, and that's an issue for us. Noting Sony has historically been better at finding a global audience for content that have already become popular in their home market. Now, I will say this, because when this got out there, especially with the headlines and stuff in that quote, it was mostly looked at as games. And while that is part of it, they are really focusing in on film and TV, especially with like streaming platforms. And specifically, they had mentioned things like anime, since we know Sony does own Crunchyroll, and that is a big contender in that streaming space to just try to eat up as much consumer interest as possible in the entertainment field, which they have here at about $3 trillion. So naturally, they're looking around saying, well, okay, we need to continue building our own intellectual properties that are recognizable, similar to, we can even say, Mario, right? That's a big one there, right? You can also look at, for on their side, God of War with Kratos. You notice I'm going the title and then the character. That I think is a big thing right now. Mario's name is just in like all the games, obviously, for the most part that he's in. But when you look at Sony right now, they have been making new intellectual properties, and they do it fairly consistently. Every couple of entries, sometimes just one, they'll then try to make another new IP. And that is very purposeful. Yes, trying to change things up and keep it fresh, but also just seeking out, trying to find maybe that big home run hit that they can then take and spin off into movie, TV, and other things with merchandise. See, because you can make a good game like Ghost of Tsushima, but then you ask, okay, who's the main character, who's the mascot? And most people won't go, oh, it's Jin Sakai, obviously. They'll just go, oh, it's, I don't know, it's Ghost of Tsushima. But if you look at the PlayStation now, Spider-Man, that's not Sony's, right? I mean, God of War, sure, there's Kratos, but I do wonder, in terms of the brand strength of God of War now versus even during the late PS2, PS3 days, if it's still that strong, although God of War 2018 was legitimately incredible to experience, I think. But with God of War Ragnarok, it seems like they're even maybe going in a different direction now with all of that. And for them, they need a continuous stream of intellectual properties that they need to apparently create now, as opposed to going back and getting older ones. That's the thing that is blowing my mind and many people. It's like, if you're having a harder time creating new ones, go back, get older ones that the current generation might not be familiar with, and rebuild them. Work to revive them and reboot them. I mean, people talk about now with things that happen with Concord, well, you got Killzone. That's a good Resistance. You know, go get some of those how SOCOM. See if you can make something out of them. Well, I think really Sony just wants to make new intellectual properties that are more, we can even say modernized, maybe ones that fit more into the current landscape. But still, I think it is worth exploring some of those older intellectual properties and seeing if they can work now. And in some cases, they are through things like TV and film, but they obviously want that trifecta so that they can really capitalize on it across the board in all sectors of their companies. That, I think, is really what they meant here. Not that they don't have new intellectual properties that they're using for games, but that they want ones that are incredibly strong. Like, they're looking at Nintendo and like, how do we get to that point where we can have entire theme parks around some of our IPs? And yeah, in that case, they have some thinking to do there. And in our last bit of news, we do have an update for Enotria, which is a game that pretty much had the developers blasting, along with the CEO of the company, Xbox, and their lack of just help to get their game out there, just basic communication for the most part, as their port for the Xbox was ready to go. Well, it seems that it only took a few days after putting that out there online that it's been resolved. This we can see posted up over on their official account, where they say, we would like to officially thank Phil Spencer and his team for reaching out to us so promptly and helping to resolve our situation. We'd like to thank our amazing community for all the support shown in recent days. Your voice has been heard very loud and clear, and your commitment has been heartwarming. We are now working closely with Microsoft, and we hope this collaboration will lead to the game's release for Xbox as soon as possible. So, I guess it just took them really making it the whole thing a very public event to get Xbox's attention, Microsoft's attention, and fix it. Saying Phil Spencer, I'm sure Phil probably saw this happening on social media. He was like, all right, let's figure this out now. Think about what happened with Capcom, where its stories got out there that it was an issue with the technical side of things, with the MT framework. All of a sudden now, that's been fixed. So the moral of the story really is, if you're a studio that's having a hard time with Microsoft in the background and you're trying to keep it quiet, apparently make it very loud, because that's working now. It gets their attention, and it just seems like maybe something that slipped through the cracks and they just need to be reminded. So there you go. At least in this case, Enotria is coming out on Xbox. No word necessarily when it's happening, just that I guess the process has been restarted, and the fact they had their ports ready to go and Microsoft is aware of this, maybe they can expedite it and get it out, I guess, not too far or too long after the PlayStation and PC version release here in a couple of weeks. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, what's your prediction for Astrobot Metacritic score? Okay, so that should be out, I think, by the time this video goes live. I haven't seen the score yet, obviously, because they're not live yet. But sometime today, this morning, they will be live, and we'll get a good Metacritic score settling down probably by this afternoon. Let's see, the majority say 85 to 89. We then have the 90 to 94, 31%. Wow, it went the opposite direction. Okay. 8%, really confident, 95 plus. I have my prediction. I'm like right around 87 to 88 when it settles down. I think I'm going to go 88. I'm going to go 88. And that's a very, very good score, obviously. I mean, 3D platformer like that already does we see 3D platformers, they do struggle at times when it comes to just review scores across the board. You know, they can be down like the 70s, low 80s. I think Astro does break through here and gets very close to that 90, which can be difficult, clearly, to attain because, I mean, 88 is good. 90 plus is incredible. I think Astrobot's just going to be a really fun time. And the biggest thing is I hope it sells well because I wanted to send a message to Sony that those kind of games do have a place in their pipeline. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from Ark, who says, everybody knew this was going to happen when the release trailer was shown and everybody became aware it was a hero shooter. Sony thought they knew better, and the worst part is nobody will learn anything from this and it will keep happening. That is a little weird that Sony and I guess Firewalk struggled to understand that it wasn't going to do well. Then that I guess they just didn't see the feedback. They didn't understand it. The fact that so many people there had to have seen that, and all of us looked at it and said, okay, this isn't gonna work, but they still pushed forward with it to the point where they released it and then pulled it back 2 weeks later. I mean, that's just embarrassing. Just outright from Sony's side. So I'm not sure how they missed that bad on all of that because they did have time to delay it even after the initial showing. We saw Microsoft do that, remember, with Halo Infinite. They showed it, we had Craig, that was a whole thing, and they delayed it, and we didn't get it till like the following year or something. So the fact that Sony saw that and was like, nah, we're good, we're keep going with it. There are a lot of questions that arise from all of that, especially around Sony attempting to navigate their live service initiative. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll have it up next to me here in a card, or maybe you wanted to see the ultimate PlayStation 2 build completely modded out for 2024, I'll have that link below. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.